Hello there, hi, and welcome back. It is me, it is Jim. We listen to music, we talk about music, we do all kinds of musicy things. Today, I'm talking to Greg Spawton. Greg Spawton from Big Big Train. Hi, Greg, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Jim. How are you?
Yeah, very, very well indeed. Thank you so much for taking time out to come and be with me today.
You're
Um,
welcome.
so I'm guessing you probably don't know who I am or anything about me at all. I'm not a journalist. I know that you'll be doing a lot of these interviews with people who are seasoned pros and journalists and whatnot. I've got a reasonably small YouTube channel that's been running on and off for about 5, 6 years almost now. And it started off as one of those hated reaction channels. um,
Okay. Yeah.
and it's kind of stayed the same, but I feel it's more of a just friends gathering together and listening to music and sort of a lot of it's a nostalgia thing, a lot of it's people finding out about new music and stuff like that. And as part of that whole vibe, about almost from the beginning of the time I had the channel going, people were saying I really need to be listening to Big Big Train, and it
Okay.
took a long time to get there. So actually, it wasn't until last July that I finally listened to some of your music. So I'm very, very new to the band,
Sure.
which is probably coming from a very different direction from most of the other people who you talking to are at the minute. So
Yeah.
my knowledge of your back catalogue, I mean, I'm getting there. I've got a lot of the stuff, but I haven't listened to all of it yet. So Ingenious Devices was the first thing I listened to
Oh, okay. Yeah.
on vinyl. Someone so actually sent it to me, and I sort of
Oh,
this is
nice.
yeah, I know. And it's kind of sort of just gone from there, really. Um, I mean, what a band! Where have you been? I mean, no, you've been there all the time, but they're exciting times for you now because obviously you have a new lineup, you have a new album coming out, a new record label, all these amazing things. It feels like it's a great time for the band.
It's been a long journey. And yeah, but it's strange to me that we still are fairly recently coming across people's kind of on their radars. Actually, you mentioned somebody giving you an album. We got on Bob Harris's Whispering Bob's radar. Somebody gave him a vinyl album.
Wow.
And an awards thing, and suddenly we found ourselves being played on Radio 2. So it's like, wow, The only problem with it was his show at the time was at midnight till 2 in the morning. So it wasn't getting listened to by many people, but we were finding that our royalties were coming in rather much more nicely than previously. So that was nice. So, but I think that speaks of our fans, the fact that somebody sent you an album and gave Bob Harris an album. That's the kind of sort of almost missionary zeal that some of our fans have. Bless them,
Yeah.
bless their hearts, because they want us to make music. That's it. And they support us, and people come to regular. They'll do whole tours or half tours or whatever. They'll do more than one show. Um, so where have we been? I don't know. We've been kind of we started off as a hobby band, and then we became, I've used the analogy a couple of times in interviews of sort of Pinocchio story, really, where we kind of it was almost like not a pretend band, but it was almost like it was a studio project. And then we came out and started playing shows again in 2015, and suddenly the audience began to really pick up. So yeah, I mean, I'm in my late 50s, and I didn't become a full-time musician until my mid 50s. So that's how weird my life's been, really.
Wow. I'm almost at my mid 50s now. I'm still not a full-time musician. I mean, I've been a musician all my life and I've got, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tracks, and I think maybe they've all been heard maybe about 200 or 300 times in total. And
Yeah.
it's a you have to make a decision, I guess, at some point to jack everything in and concentrate 100%. I'm not brave enough to do that, so it's
Yeah, I think the one of the problems you face these days, or we all face, is the illusion of choice almost. There's just so much music. It's a wall of music,
absolutely.
and therefore getting your head above the parapet is extremely difficult. And people, I think some musicians make the mistake of thinking that the world owes them a living because they're creative and all that. Like, well, that's just, I'm afraid that's just not the way it is. I wish it was, but it doesn't. And so you have to be lucky. You have to roll with the punches as we've done over the years, and you have to be a craftsman in terms of getting the best material that you can together and getting it out there and getting, as you said, mentioned, recently signed to a proper record label and all that lot. So there's hope for us all, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
is the
yeah.
lesson.
And you were saying about being a wall of music, just there's so much choice there. It's kind of like the double-edged sword with things like Spotify and streaming, isn't it? That it has leveled the playing field for a lot of musicians that they can get their music out there, but it's also means that there is so much choice, you end up not choosing anything at all, which
That's,
is kind of why most of the time I just listen to physical stuff, and then if I want to
yeah.
music while I'm out on a run or something like that, I'll rip a CD and have it on my phone and listen to it that way.
Okay, yeah. So you found a discipline really just to control
Yeah, I've tried
the
to.
wall of
I've
noise.
tried to. I mean, I still absolutely, of course, every other person on the planet, I still have a Spotify account and I listen to
Yeah.
Spotify. It's because it is useful in some ways, but it's also, if it's the only way you listen to music, then I think you'll end up just sort of driving yourself insane trying to find the right things. It's so easy just to press next, isn't it? Not listen to an
It
album.
is, and I think there's the same thing with videos on YouTube. You can just lose an afternoon because you see another, oh, that looks interesting, and then before you know it, you found yourself 2 hours into how to play, Ripples by Genesis or something, and you've lost time. So it does require, um, access to data is an incredible thing, but it does require some self-discipline. And that's partly why we did, with the album that we just made, we did go out, we thought actually our music's inspired by 70s music. Let's do it properly and go into a studio and do it all together in the same room, like they used to do. I think there's a value in you listening to vinyl in or CDs if you prefer, but listening to something on physical formats, and there's a value in doing things the old school way. And I think what I hope is over the next 10 to 20 years, as we kind of get to terms with, we're still getting to terms with the internet really, and what it brings, the pros and the cons. But that people find ways of, reprogramming themselves so that they can make it work for us all in a positive way rather than a negative way.
One thing I've always wondered, where did the name come from? Big, big train.
So my yeah, I mean, this name it sucks really as a band name, doesn't it? But then I was reading an interview with Elbow the other day, and I mean, that's also sucks as a band name, doesn't it? Let's be honest about it. So I don't think it becomes a brand after a while. So that's the important thing, that people can kind of remember it. But the simple reality was my family were on the railways. So
Ah,
my grandfather and my uncles were all railwaymen in Leicester. So there was a lot of railway kind of conversation around me. And at some stage, when I was 10 or 11, maybe somebody bought me a toy called a Big Big Train. It had big plastic red track and big locomotives. I was trying to do something different from the Hornby, I think. And I love that toy. And when my brother, who's 5 years older than me, formed his first band, which was a punk new wave band, I suggested the name,
right.
and they took that name on as Big Big Train. And I think they only like played one ever gig or something. So that band fizzled out pretty quickly. But when I moved down to the South Coast, I brought that idea with me. And when I was forming the band with Andini, and we just were we're throwing names in a hat, quite literally actually. And that seemed to be the only one that kind of we could all agree on. And have I regretted it ever since? Up to a point, but as I say, like with the Elbow thing, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's got to be something
I
similar.
was chatting to another band a few weeks ago called Advent Horizon, and they come from Utah in America.
Yeah.
And I asked them the same question about where the name came from. And he said, "Oh, it's a really embarrassing story because they formed the band when they were like 14 years old." And one of the members of the band came back from, I think, a physics lesson. So, "Oh man, I just heard this really great theory about Advent Horizon." And so they said, "Oh, that's a cool name."
Oh no! So Event Horizon,
Yeah, yeah, literally.
ah
And then been playing for years and years and years. And then someone said, "You do know it's Event Horizon," by which time it was, oh no.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. That's a brilliant
Yeah,
band name story.
yeah.
That's
But
fantastic.
everybody has stuck with it because it's there's loads of other Event Horizons out there, but there's no one called Ad
Yeah.
Horizon. And so
No, of course. And when you think about it, you understand why. Because I'm now thinking advent calendars and all sorts of things. But that's a great band story name. Love it, love it.
yeah. Um, so Inside Out Music, what a great fit. I mean, obviously you must know that because you're there, but they are an incredible label from my point of view. There's just so much amazing music coming out because of them, legacy bands and new bands,
Yeah.
and they are sort of genuinely sort of discovering and bringing brilliant music to the world. How did that all come about? Was it a long sort of courtship, as it were, or
Yeah, it was. It was. So we reached a stage a few years ago where we thought actually we're kind of hitting sort of glass ceiling where we can't. It doesn't feel like we can move on to other levels.
Hmm.
And when I say move on to other levels, really the primary concern is just to get your music heard as widely as possible
for sure?
because you can grow the fan base, and then of course you can stay in the game by generating income from touring and from merchandise and all of those things. So it's important both from an artistic point of view, but also from a commercial point of view, because we are in a business at the end of the day. And we're all beginning to think, actually, I think we've got as far as we can in this sort of model. And we were getting in Mojo and the Times, and we were getting into the mainstream music press, but it still felt like there was a bit of a something lacking in what we could deliver, or helping us deliver things to the market. So we did have a bit of a beauty parade. I think we're a bit unusual, being a kind of we're not. I reject the name retro, but I think we're definitely rooted in those kind of 70s prog traditions. And most of the prog bands around now, or many of them, are either heavier with a Dream Theater kind of influence, or maybe bringing in more contemporary sounds, etc. But we were kind of fairly solidly
Yeah.
influenced by those great bands from the 70s. So I think there was quite a, there was a I wouldn't say we were being, we didn't have like 10 labels running around after us, but we certainly had three or four who were making decent offers to us. So we did have a little bit of a beauty parade. And after doing some, conversations, and manager dealt with most of this, to be honest, he felt Inside Out was the best fit for us. And then our lead singer David died.
Uh,
So, suddenly we ended up, on the cusp of getting a deal agreed, and then suddenly the whole world was turned upside down for us. Um, and you may have read elsewhere whether we carried on the band and all those things was something that we took some time to puzzle over. But when we decided to carry on and we recruited Alberto, I didn't hand on heart. Again, it's a business. So hand on heart, with our backs against the wall and all that, I didn't imagine that Inside Out would still be there, showing interest. But to their great credit, they were, and they signed us with Alberto as the lead singer. And it's been part of a kind of relaunch of the band, I suppose, after the tragedy that we've been through. And they have been, I cannot speak more highly of them, that we've been blessed with really competent, responsive, thoughtful A&R people. I think I just think they're great. And there's always a downside. You if you sign into a label, you get an advance, and the advance sounds like a lot of money up front, but at the end of the day, it goes quite quickly, and then what you get as income from individual sales is not as high as would have been if you were direct selling and all those things. So there's always a downside to it, and there's always a judgment to be made. But they have been brilliant, and they've enabled us, for example, to do an Atmos release of the studio album, which we've not been able to do before, and things like that.
hmm.
And we've got like an Atmos launch event on Wednesday, I think, of this week. So and they're hosting that. They've set that up and all of those things. So yeah, I cannot speak more highly of them. They've been fantastic for us. Really good.
I guess though, sort of having that clout behind you gives you a much bigger reach and enables you to. Are is it next week or the week after you're going to America? Is that the first time you've been able to tour there?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we did have we were we were very stubbornly independent, and we were doing all of that on our own. And before David passed away, we had tour booked, and then COVID happened. In fact, I think we had two tours booked, and we lost both of them because of COVID. And of course, the problem is we'd spent nearly £10,000 on visas, American visas. The visa process is a nightmare, and all that money had gone out, and then suddenly the tour was cancelled, and you kind of imagine, well, this is an international emergency. Can we have our money back, please? But it doesn't work like that with the US government. It's gone. So so it's not cheap to go and tour over there anyway. Inside out have helped to sponsor our visas to go this time. Not every band gets accepted these days either. So it's quite a difficult process. And I'm kind of in the process here of just beginning to pack up and get ready to head off. So yeah, it's going to be exciting. I mean, we're playing small venues. I mean, we play bigger venues in the UK, and in some parts of Europe. We're still building. I mean, it's a kind of it's a tough market for a band of our type. If we were younger, if we were heavier, maybe, then I think there's a bigger heavy rock audience out there. But for more sort of traditional 70s kind of style progressive rock, it's really hard to build the audience. And we've spent a long time doing that in the UK. And we've got a reasonable size audience now. And we're going to try and do that in the States and in continental Europe. But we're still in. It's been a long haul, but we're still in for a longer haul, if you see what I mean.
Well, hopefully this little interview we're doing today might help a bit because I know that
Yeah.
when I listened to that album last summer, I had so many. I mean, my audience is the majority of the audience is in America. The second
Yeah.
chunk is the UK. Then after that, I think it's
Yeah.
Germany. Then it sort of filters down. We've got the Netherlands and France
Yeah.
and sort of South America as well. So the response from that was that, oh, that sounds incredible. People went out and then bought the album off the back of that.
Okay.
And I think from this as well, there's a big my audience is predominantly listening to progressive rock, some progressive metal, progressive rock. So there's a balance between the two, and classic rock and all everything in between. So yeah, there's definitely, I think, an audience there for you. I'm actually going to see you when you come to Milton Keynes. See you at the
Oh,
stable.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've not played there before, so we've heard very good
It's a lovely little venue.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've it needed to be on our radar sooner actually, but sadly hasn't been. I mean, that's the other thing we're trying to do is reach places we haven't. So when we started playing live, we were kind of doing almost residencies really in a single place, and people were coming to us. And then of course you start thinking, actually we need to, a lot of people don't like to try. I like to travel. I'm a traveler, so therefore, if a band, if there's a band I want to go and see and they're in Rome or whatever, then great, I'm going to go. And I've done that with I've traveled long distances to see my favorite bands because it's the experience of the whole thing. But there's not everyone's like that. They like to just be able to go out and have a drink and go and see a band in their local town, and also secondly, not everyone's got money, so you've got to do your bit to try and get to people like in the old days. And so again, we're on a longer tour, or we're doing longer runs now and trying to get to places. The US thing is just that is a toe in the water. It's just, I think we're playing 5 shows, and we're not going to the West Coast because it's just so bloody far to go.
You don't realise that, do you? Because obviously in the UK, so you can get everywhere in about sort of 3 hours in a car. But
I know, and no matter how many times somebody explains to me how big United States is, I mean, I know it's big, but you still can't quite get your head around how big it is. And that it is like going across Europe. Of course it is. But then all the logistics and every mile you travel is expense for a band because it's time and it's petrol and it's all of those things. And so it needs very careful planning. We got a tour manager who does the heavy lifting on that. chap called Graham Collins, and he's been doing this work a long time. And just in fact, just this morning, our kind of tour software was updated, so I can now look ahead and see what the next month or so of my life will be like. Really going from this hotel to that tour bus to the, it's all kind of in there as a sort of bible of the touring musician's life. But yeah, you've got to hope that when we go back, if we can go back to the States, that the audiences will be slightly bigger, and we can travel a bit further and do the West Coast and all those things.
Really. Do you have a support band with you as well when you're over there?
We do, yeah. We've got a couple of support bands. We've got a band called Is, who are supporting us at one of the shows in New Jersey, and I think Dave Bainbridge is supporting us at the other one. I'm sounding slightly uncertain there, and that's because I'm not entirely sure which gigs that they're supporting us at.
Was that the IZZ years?
Yes.
Yeah. Because I saw that on this. So ZZ Top, I read that. So, that's completely my head. What?
Well, I mean, I've been in touch with a chap there called John Gargano for quite some time. Really lovely guy, and he's helped me out. He's lending me some bass pedals. So it's that sort of thing. I mean, my Taurus bass pedals down there weigh half a ton, and you've got to factor in all of those things in terms of getting them to the States, and the cost of that, the cost of air freightage. And we were, just the last couple of weeks, we were looking at, well, our tour manager looking at keyboard hire, and it was almost as expensive to hire in the States for 3 weeks as it was just to buy a keyboard, a £3,000 keyboard. So I don't know. You get to a stage. I was talking to Rob, our soundman, a couple of days ago, where you just think, why do we do this? There's just a million things to plan and think through, and bills to pay, and you wonder why, and then you're in front of an audience and you're connecting, and then you remember why. That's it. That's why you do it.
I guess having Nick based in America means that he hasn't got to sort of transport his kit across the sea. But
yeah, that's right. Well, in fact, he would normally. We've had British Drum Company and other sponsors in the UK and Europe for him. I mean, he's got quite a big profile, Andy V. So in the drum, he's quite a big guy in the drum world. I love these musicians communities are quite funny. There's the guitar community and the drum community and all those things. And the drum community is very, very, paradiddle heavy, and they're all the rudiments and all that stuff. So he's, because he can play all that technical stuff but make it swing, he's got rightly got quite a big profile in that world. So he's very excited because he's in fact he's touring with Mr. Big at the moment. So he's doing some good rock and roll, and then he's going to suddenly be playing in 7/8 and 11/8 and all that sort of thing. So he's got the chance to kind of cover different bases in his life, and it's good for him. But he's been wanting us to go to the States forever, so it's nice that we finally get there for him.
So, I mean, I had some questions. I know they're all sort of getting mixed up now because the conversation's moving around. But I was going to say, so in the past, you've had quite a lot of collaborators you're working with over the years, and some of whom obviously become members of the band, like Nick has done. So I would say Nick DeVigilio, Dave Meros from Spock's Beard, Pete Travaus, Jem Godfrey, Dave Gregory, and even Francis Dunnery. Is there any people that you've got on your wish list that you'd love to play with that you haven't done yet?
Which I'd love to play with. Not really. I mean, there are bands and musicians that I admire a lot. And I think if I was going to do a solo thing, then I probably would try and tick off some of those people. There's a band I love who are not progressive rock at all called Delamitri. And I happen to think Justin Curry is one of the greatest songwriters of all time. And he's also got a beautiful voice. So, and there's the sort of fantasy band stuff that you can think about if I was doing something solo. But in the world of prog, no, not really. I think it's been fun to work with other artists. And I think when we were working with Dave Meros and Pete Travis and Jem, I think because we weren't touring at that time, we were just trying to think of ways of building the audience by engaging with others and using their kind of clout as well as their musicality. Francis Dunnery was just because I adore the guy. He's he's a big part of my musical background with the Bites band. So I just that was kind of scratching an itch. Dave Gregory was interesting because of course he's a you know high profile guitar player in XTC, not a progger,
No.
but actually like many of the bands from the new wave and the punk sort of era, they behind the scenes they were proggers, and I remember Phil Collins telling a couple of stories where Sex Pistol members would come up to him and say, "Oh, I love your music," but they couldn't
Sorry.
announce that,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it wasn't seen to be the case. And I think Dave, what Dave enjoyed, I think, was being given an opportunity to play a guitar solo over 2 minutes rather than 8 bars.
Yeah.
And that broadly, and I remember speaking to him about that. He said in XTC, broadly a solo you get 8 bars max. And the first thing that Dave ever did for us was a 2.5 minute guitar solo. So he was, like, oh, well, this is a chance to spread my wings a bit. But that's what I love about prog rock. That's the thing. You can do a 4 minute song, you can do a 14-minute song or whatever, but you don't have rules. I don't like rules. And it's nice that you can just untether yourself from the sort of pop kind of requirement.
Hmm.
And but also retether yourself if you want to. You don't have to do all long songs. You can mix and match things as we try to do on the new album, because that's what Genesis were like. That's what the Beatles were like. That's how the great bands were in the 60s and 70s. It wasn't all topographic oceans. It was often a mixture of great songwriting and longer pieces with instrumental sections. And that's where I think we kind of sit in the world of music.
Yeah, I agree. And I've listened to the album. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It is, um,
Thank you.
well, I'm going to say that anyway, but genuinely, it is such a great, it's so lush. It sounds beautiful. The recording of it, and you can hear you all sort of playing off each other, and you've already said that you're all in a room together, and I actually can hear
Yeah.
that it is a very
Yeah.
collaborative um, way of making music. It
Yeah.
just sounds brilliant. So
Thank you.
I think the world is going to be very excited to hear it when it comes out in a couple of weeks' time, 1st of March.
Yeah, I hope so. It's funny. I mean, we recorded the album last May, so we're already talking about the next album and promoting this one. That's the way of the world, in the music business. But yeah, I think generally speaking, the vast majority of people that have heard it, and there's not that many have so far, have been very positive. We had a Mojo review a couple of days ago, and some of our fans were going, "Oh, it's only 3 stars," but I said, look, generally they only go up to 4 stars, so to get a progressive rock album reviewed in Mojo at all is an achievement, and to get that sort of level of score is even more so. So we were very happy with that, and we've got, I think, classic rock and stuff like that coming up as well. So the importance of the magazine reviews, of course, is that their names carry weight. That they're just historic kind of things, but they do. So it's useful for us in terms of advertising and for just people coming across us from the more general music world. So yeah, hopefully people will enjoy it like you have.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's such an international band.
Mm.
I'm guessing it never sort of started off that way, and that wasn't an intention when you started to make it international, but it's become that. Um, for such an international band, it sounds very English. And I think that's a really lovely thing. And embarrassingly, one of the questions I had before I then did some research was, I'm surprised you haven't written about Brunel. Then I realized, oh my God, of course you have.
Yes, I have.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's just so much of that sort of industrial Victorian, but everything that's not sort of, I don't know, sort of modern Britain, but sort of like uh, just slightly greasy, mechanical,
Yeah,
big
yeah.
ideas, big people doing big things from little ideas, and all of it being sort of real. I just love that. I absolutely love that. And
Yeah, it's a strange thing. It's my kind of it's just what cogs, the cogs in my brain. I find those things interesting. And the strange thing that I've found over the years, I mean, most societies have been through an industrial phase and then a sort of post-industrial phase, really. And obviously, in places like China, they're still heavily in an industrial phase. But I think that that what surprised me when particularly when we did the Wonderful Yard, and that was when we really started writing about those subjects from that point on, was the amount of emails or letters I'd get from across the world. So I was a little bit worried it would speak only to people in the UK, but in fact these stories seem to resonate across the world. And I'd be getting people writing to me saying my dad worked in a factory or whatever, or was a shipbuilder, or all of those things that we talked about. But I'd be getting those letters or emails from Australia, or from parts of Europe. So it was nice that resonated with people. Plus, I think we tend to, because we're sat in the UK, we can see what problems we face, and it's not always great here. But I think from the outside looking in, the UK is generally seen mostly positively in the world. In the same way, I mean, our singer's Italian, and I love Italy and all of those things, like we all do. And but he would just go, oh, nothing works. And I think that's it. You see the failings in your own societies more clearly than you do in those that you want to be associated with or visit. So it does seem to be a popular thing, but it isn't nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. It's just stuff that interests us.
It's like,
Um,
I mean, I, from a sort of a television personality point of view, the only person I could sort of think would be like that, I don't know why I'm thinking this, is be Guy Martin. Do you know the guy who does the
yeah, I do. It's a
cars
yeah,
and
yeah.
drives so far? He just likes being greasy and mucky and stuff. And I think it's fantastic. And I'm not saying that the band is greasy and mucky at all, but it's about that sort of that real stuff. And I think it's so lovely. There's nothing.
I think that's a very good analogy, actually, and yeah, he's almost a personification of some of the things that we write about. Yeah, and we tried, something like East Coast Racer, we almost tried to get the sort of clanking kind of, energy of that within the music as much as you can. Albeit we were telling, what for me, the thing that I find most interesting is the way that human beings use technology and engineering to extend their reach. So it's the combination of the two things together that really speak to my heart. So East Coast Racer was, yes, it was about the Mallard, but it was about the people that built her and designed her and drove her. It's all of that. Same with Voyager, the spaceship, the track that we did about the spaceships. It was the human element there, and there was one bit in there that really spoke to me. And on the Golden Record, they had sort of, I think they captured the brainwaves of one of the engineers who happened to be in love at the time. So there's this kind of capture of love on there, which is an amazing. That is, and it's those connections that just really absolutely speak to me, and that's what we try to write about and find stories to tell.
Do you have more stories to tell? Is there more
Yeah,
coming?
we do. We're always. I mean, I've got a whole notebook of ideas, and actually, people send me stuff as well. Say, well, you need to write about this, and occasionally they'll send me something, and I think, oh, that is interesting. So we do. Yeah, we've got plenty more stories to tell. In fact, the next album that we're looking at doing is probably going to be either a concept album, or we'll have a concept across two albums, and that will be a story that we're looking at the moment. The album that we're just about to release, of course, was much more of a personal thing because of all the things that we've been through in recent years. But we still had one story song on there, Miramare, and I'm sure we'll definitely be returning to storytelling in the future.
Fantastic. You don't have to answer that. I mean, we can cut this out if this doesn't work. But I do always, when I sort of do these things to chat with people, I ask them, are there 5 albums, if you were on Desert Island Discs, are there 5 albums you could not live without?
Wow.
It's a
Okay.
hard.
So I'll start with the obvious one. Selling England by the Pound by Genesis.
Yeah.
It was my introduction to progressive rock in '76 or '7, and I still think it's one of the greatest albums ever made. Mentioned Delamitri earlier. There's an album of theirs called Twisted, which I think is an absolutely stunning piece of just like a songwriting workshop for me, really. Prefab Sprout. I think the album of theirs I would choose to be Jordan the Comeback, which I just is like it's a semi-concept sort of thing. And again, the songwriting is at the highest level. Um, that's three.
It
I'm
is.
running out of I'm running out of others. Maybe I go with yes, going for the one.
Oh,
I
my
For
favorite
me,
Yes album.
that's their greatest moment, that album. I know people always rave about Close to the Edge, but for me, going for the one was where they really, really nailed it. There's a song
It,
called Awaken on there.
yeah, that had such an incredible connection with me because I was sitting here in exactly this seat, listening to it with a camera in front of me, just as I,
Yeah.
and I've got a window in front of me here, and just as it was hitting those high parts, they're going through
Yeah.
the chords going up and up and up, sort of moving to heaven almost. There's a kite
Yes.
outside. There's a
Oh my
circling.
God.
Oh my god, this could not be more perfect.
Wow.
And it was I was
Wow.
moved to tears by it. And
Yeah, no, I mean, I think when I just couldn't believe how good Awaken is. It just is an extraordinary. I think that and Supper's Ready possibly, if you want to kind of explain the where progressive rock can reach the parts that other music can't. And as you say, when it builds and builds and builds, it's just almost crazy how successful that album is.
you seen the one that John Anderson did with an orchestra called Todmobile in Iceland?
Yeah, I have. I wish they'd just released that on audio. I've seen the video of it, and it just blew my socks off. Absolutely extraordinary. I know they've done a Genesis one as well, and just absolutely fantastic, completely brilliant. So yeah, yeah, I can't. I come back. Going for the one is for me almost perfect. And I think there's one more. I think I have one more choice.
Hey. Yeah.
And I go with a Mew album, I think. There's a song I love of theirs called Comforting Sounds, which I think is on Glass Handed Kites, but it might be on a different one of albums of theirs. The older you get, the more you kind of forget the names of the albums that you like. Back in the old days, I could remember I could write, I could probably recite the lyrics to Supper's Ready if you asked me to now, but now I can barely remember an album title. But I would say the Mew and the Glass-Handed Kites is a brilliant album. So more contemporary kind of Danish sort of prog, kind of old prog sort of thing. So is that it? Is that my selection?
It is all done. Yeah. So there's three there that I don't know. I mean, I know of all three bands that you've talked about: Mew, Delamitri, and Prefab Sprout, but I don't know much of their material. Delamitri and Prefab Sprout, I think there were a couple of tracks which were on the radio. It's back in the end of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
90s, which I will know, but I can't think of the top of my head. So there's absolutely sort of music for me to explore out of this. So this is
Well,
good.
the interesting thing with Delamitri is Justin. He if a woman wants to know how men think, then give them a Delamitri album because he's got an extraordinary way of explaining how men operate, I think.
Hmm.
So sometimes you think, Christ, God, that's me. But it's not me that I really want exposed to the world, if you see what I mean. He really does dial to the heart. But there's one song of his I strongly recommend you just check out. This one song. It's called "Sleep Instead of Teardrops." It's about his girlfriend dealing with the loss of, I think, her mum or dad or something. And it's a song that is so unbearably poignant that it's almost difficult to listen to, but it's an observation of grief,
Hmm.
and I don't think I've ever heard a better piece of writing in my life. It's got a Beatles influence. It's got so they went in and recorded strings on it, so it sounds very Beatlesy, but lyrically and emotionally, it's actually devastating. And yeah, with Prefab Sprout, Jordan the Comeback it's a genius. Four sides of vinyl. It's genius. It really is. That guy, Paddy
Well,
McAloon, what a writer. Brilliant.
fantastic. Well, Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I hope that the album launch goes well, and
Thank you.
the tours coming up in America and in Europe later in the year go well too. Yeah,
I'll meet you at Milton Keynes.
That'll be lovely. Actually, say hello. Yeah, fantastic.
Exactly.
So thank you very much, and goodbye.
Great to speak to you, Jim. Take care, mate.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.